Hello, my name is Katie Johnson. I'm with the Lewis County Planning Department, and I want to welcome you to the Planning Commission public meeting today. This meeting is taking place in person, streaming live via Zoom, and it is being recorded. For those joining us via Zoom, please remember to mute your phone or device when you are not speaking. If you forget to mute your phone or device, we will mute you. The Zoom chat feature is modified so participants may report technical difficulties directly to myself, the clerk. No public comment or questions will be taken through the chat feature. Tonight's meeting is a joint workshop on the comprehensive plan periodic update. We will start roll call. The following planning commissioners are present in the room. Commissioners Spogan, Russell, Alves, Corbin, Rich, Moore, and Scootley. In addition, we welcome the Board of County Commissioners tonight, Commissioners Brummer, Pollock, with 7 planning commissioners present. We do have a quorum. Commissioner Corbin.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order the August 27th meeting of the Lewis County Planning Commission. I'd like to welcome the Board of County Commissioners that are with us tonight for this special workshop. And before we begin, I thought it would be good if maybe we went around the room quickly and introduced ourselves, our name, what commissioner district, if you know it, or where you live. Would be fine. So I will go ahead and start. My name is Frank Corbin and I am Commissioner District 3 and I live down on Kirkland Road, not far from the Ribeye Restaurant.
So Lindsay Pollock, Lewis County Commissioner for District 2, and I live in the St. Urban area.
Gretchen Fritsch, I live in Packwood, so District 3.
I'm Bob Russell. I live up on top of Kennecott. I'm in District 2.
Jason Alves, live in Centralia, District 1.
Scott Brummer and Commissioner for District 3. I live in Winlock.
My name is Clay White. I'm with Kimberly Horn. We're assisting Lewis County with its comprehensive plan update. Happy to be here tonight.
Joe Farias. I'm with Kimberly Horn helping out with the comprehensive plan workshop. Nice to meet you all.
Lori Spogan, live on Logan Hill, District 1.
Jeff Scootley, live up on Buckhorn.
Mindy Brooks, I'm the Community Development Director and I live in Packwood.
Roger Moore, I'm at large, but I live in Centralia.
Ryan Barrett, Lewis County Manager, and I live in District 2 off of Brockway.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. And welcome to the members of the public that are here tonight. Thank you for joining us. A couple of housekeeping items that we need to take care of first. Prior to tonight, the Planning Commission received the agenda for today, and the agenda is displayed on the screen. I would entertain a motion and a second from the Planning Commission members to approve the agenda as presented.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Lori. It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Also, prior to tonight, the planning commissioners received the meeting notes from the August 13th, 2024 meeting. Are there any corrections to the meeting notes? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting notes of August 13th, 2024 as was submitted to us.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Bob.
Second.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting notes of August 13, 2024. Any final discussion? Okay, hearing none, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everybody. All right. Any public comment signed up or online?
There is no public comment.
Okay. All right. Then tonight's agenda item is a workshop on the comprehensive plan periodic update. As all the planning commissioners know and the commissioners, we have been talking comprehensive plan update for quite a number of months now, but this is an opportunity to have a workshop with our county commissioners, which we so appreciate the opportunity. We'll have a presentation by the county's consultant, Clay White, with Kimley Horn, and then there'll be a small group discussion and report outs. So during the small group discussions, Zoom will be muted. So if you're online and you are muted, please understand that it'll be impossible for you to follow what's going on anyway, but you will continue to be able to watch. Okay. I turn it over to our consultants.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
think we've got a quick presentation that we're going to do, and then our primary purpose in being here tonight is just to get feedback from all of you to help us with direction as we put together draft policies as part of the comprehensive plan. So I think we'll pull up the slide deck real quick. And we can go to the next slide whenever you have time. It's no rush. Okay, so as part of our agenda tonight, we have some really kind of high level goals. We're going to provide you just an overview of how we're making draft policy revisions to the comprehensive plan. So you can kind of understand the state law process and then how we're getting community feedback and be here with you and how that kind of drives some policy direction. You earlier set some review priorities, and we want to chat about those really briefly so you can see how those are integrated into the work that we're doing. Then most importantly, we want to have some breakout sessions. And we've kind of broken it up by different elements of the comprehensive plan, just to get a better sense of some of the things that are important to you, the programs that we should be looking at, the goals for different elements. And it's really going to be helpful as we put together draft policies, just making sure that we're hearing from you. And that's going to help us get that draft together later on this year. So we've just got some questions. We're going to break out some groups, but the feedback's going to be immensely helpful. Because really that point is, instead of drafting a comprehensive plan and then bringing it out to the public, it's really good if we hear from the public, meet with county departments, meet with the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners, get all of that information, then put the draft together, then go out to the public and receive more feedback so that we can have a really thorough public process where people can have input, be invested, and really we can drive the outcomes that you'd like to see. We can go on to the next slide. So just a little bit about our process. So our goal is to have this project completed by June 30th of next year. State law did make some amendments to let it go towards the end of 2025, but we're still trying to stay on target to be completed by June of next year. It's always nice when things get done before you get into budget season and all those other things. So we're driving towards that. But the schedule up here is really about what's going to get us to a draft of the comprehensive plan. So my eyes aren't as good, so I'm going to look at my screen a little bit. So I spent a long time working for counties, and I always have believed that our planning in the state is a bottoms-up planning process. And, you have some state law requirements that we have to meet. One of those requirements is taking a look at modifying our goals, policies, and regulations consistent with any state law changes that have occurred since the last update. So we'll be reviewing your policies to make sure that they kind of align with state laws, but we're going to hopefully do that in a way that's the Lewis County way, because you don't have to develop policies the same for every jurisdiction. So we're going to be doing that. We also want to make sure that your policies that we clean up policies, that the document's easy to read, and that we have action policies. So, really like the voice of policies. Sometimes you read policies and it might be programs or things that you accomplished 10 years ago. Do you still need those words in there? More words isn't necessarily always better. Shorter, concise, something that's readable and usable. That's something that we've certainly been focused on. So you've kind of got this, you've got some state laws, some things that we need to address in the way in which you want to address them. We want to clean up the comprehensive plan so it's a usable and user-friendly document. And then we have the most important part is community input. What are the things that are important to the community? So there's been a lot of engagement, and Mindy's been traversing the county for a long time, meeting with the community. We have our survey, we have an engagement summary that we've produced, engaging. And then we've been meeting with county departments, finding out what are the things that are important to them, the things that we need to be taking on and addressing. That feedback's come in, and then we're here tonight. And then we can consolidate all of that together. But when you think about, and then of course it'll all come together and then we'll get a draft of the comprehensive plan ready to go that we can present to the public this fall. And then we'll be taking that public comment and then coming back to the planning commission and to the board. But as we kind of break out into groups tonight, there's a couple of things I just want to be thinking about. So when I think about policies, you think about things like, what do you as a community want to accomplish over the next 20 years? When you think about, I always think about like, if I'm saving for my retirement, the day before my retirement day, I don't go like, hey, I should start savings. It's a long process and it has all these steps that you do to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So policies can be the same thing. So what do you want to accomplish? What's important to the community? And then you think about like, how are you going to accomplish these goals and who's going to accomplish these goals and when are you going to accomplish these goals? And making sure that when you're setting priorities, there are things that you have the staffing to be able to do, that there are things that you can tangibly accomplish, that you find ways that you continue to work with the cities on common goals and find all those ways that you can be coordinating because you're not in this alone. So, but what we'd really like to end up with at the end of this process is extracting out the policies that have some action associated with them and get them into an action plan for you. So policies can say, is it a short term, like 1 to 3 years? Or is it a midterm, like 4 to 6 years, or a longer term, 7 to 10 years, because you update your plan every 10 years? Who may be responsible for leading the implementation of the policy? Is it something that's going to have costs associated with it? If we can do that, then that can really kind of help that, because oftentimes there's this gap. You adopt a comprehensive plan, and then there's a void. And then there's your development regulations that you have some of the stuff in there. But if you have policies that say, work with the cities or, you work on economic development issues with different groups, like there has to be someone that picks that policy up and then says, that's what I'm doing. And we're working on these goals. So we're hoping to connect that. And then we can make sure that the policies can get worked into like individual work plans for departments that can go. Remember when we worked together, we said Public Works wanted to have this be a priority. We're picking that up. That's something that you may evaluate, Commissioner, as you're seeing like, the budget and in that program. And then you can evaluate if that's something you can move forward. So if we can do that, I think that's a success. I think that's really trying to take policy and make it action instead of just a lot of words. So that's what we're really focused on. Next slide. So Mindy, do you want to talk a little bit about the meeting in 2023?
Yeah, so many of you guys are present almost a year ago, when we did our first joint session around this. And it was a very open-ended, what's a high priority for you guys over the next 20 years? It was a big, big open-ended conversation that we had. And this is what came out of that, of the priorities. So you see, we, if you remember, we sent you the notes from that, but we grouped everything together and tried to keep it captured. So we had planning for energy industry, economic growth with proper regulations, water availability, smart growth in our UGAs, addressing short-term rentals, family regulations, development around I-5, incentivizing and trying to work on the plotting, the land size of resource lands, and then objective design standards. And I guess I would say we had some conversations around that, just around landmarks, but design standards is one of the things that we discussed, because design standards must be objective now under state law. So that's why that one ended up getting some discussion, because it's a new change to state law. So so those were our overarching issues from last time that have been brought forward, along with the meetings that we had with the community, along with our survey results. And now I think the next step that we're at here is to hone it. Right, so we're going to dig in deep. We've crafted some questions to try and dig in and get a little more specific so that we're ready for Clay to put together the draft plan.
All right. I think we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so one of the things, if for those of that have been involved with planning for a long time or have been part of previous updates, the Growth Management Act started in 1990. There's been an original plan, and then there's been several updates. A lot of the issues from previous updates, a lot of them have been pretty well settled. I still kind of, when I'm working on a new update, I harken back to the last update or the one before on things that were big topics. However, I think the topics are starting to narrow a little bit more. I mean, I think it's getting more focused. So the big changes since the last update are a lot of things regarding housing affordability, and how to accommodate housing for people making different incomes. There's a bigger burden on cities because they have to take a lot more growth than they can within urban areas and the unincorporated urban growth areas where you can provide higher densities or things that may be more affordable to people that make different incomes. So housing's a really important piece of this. And the other piece is we do have the new climate and resiliency element. Want to just point out a few things that we're working on. There's some topics up on the slide. Those are the things that the state requires us to focus on. But I guess I just want to highlight tonight that we want to bring in is this is a lot of this work you've already done. You have a hazard mitigation plan that's been completed. It's a requirement to have a hazard mitigation plan, and it outlines a lot of things you can do to be, to have a resilient community, whether it's focusing on protection of important buildings or it's fire or it's floods. I think a lot of times that it can, you might be thinking about, what will this result in new requirements on housing or land use regulations, that kind of thing. I think we're more focused on the things that are important to the county. And a lot of times these can be things like incentivizing defensible space planning, or it could be things like having policies to work with the cities that will help get grant funding for for areas that are more susceptible to flooding. So there's a lot of things I think that you already do that align with this new climate element. But I guess I just want to assure you that we're working on policies that are going to fit the goals that you have as a community. So this is a big piece that's new. Housing and climate have some big new pieces. So we're going to be, when you see the draft, we're really going to start trying to design policies we think would align well with what we've heard from the community outreach that we've done, and some of the direction that we get from all of you tonight, so that we try to size things up correctly. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay. So our primary purpose in being here tonight, like I said, before we issue a draft comprehensive plan with the policies, it'd be really nice if we had a lot of input that informs the first draft, the preliminary draft. And so part of that is being here with you tonight. So we've done the outreach with the community, done the outreach with some of the staff and teams, so planning commission and board. So what we're hoping to do tonight is we've got kind of 4 10-minute breakout sessions. And we've arranged them by comprehensive plan elements. So we've lumped some comprehensive plan elements together. You have a packet that's in front of you, and we've kind of grouped you in twos so that you can kind of work on this together. And kind of the main thing is on the first, we're going to start with land use, our land use element and our rural element, and housing as well. But the biggest thing is we're wanting to just kind of go through are what your priorities are. So what we've heard so far, let me just get to this slide. So some of the things that we've started to put together that we've heard from kind of the outreach and I know the meetings with the planning commission, the board so far, housing policies and all 3 elements, we're looking to revise them to offer a variety of affordable housing options to cater to all populations. What you can do in rural areas is different than what you can do in urban areas, so we have to understand that. We're looking at rural policies to revise them to emphasize the use of those limited areas of more intense rural development, your LAMRDs, for housing, tourism, and recreation. There have been some changes to state law since the last update that actually provide more flexibility within these small communities when you have the public facilities and services to serve them. So that not only goes for housing, and that may be an opportunity in rural areas to provide for more affordable housing types. It's hard when you have 5, 10, or 20 acre lots because the land cost alone can drive you out of the affordability range. I mean, you're already there just from the land purchase, let alone all the infrastructure. So we're looking at that. Urban growth area policies, we're looking at revised to enhance collaboration with cities, establish sub-area plans for small towns, and increase housing options within county urban growth areas, and just align things with state law. Consolidate industrial policies to streamline regulations, particularly for major industrial developments. So major industrial developments are a type of urban growth that are allowed outside of urban growth areas under the Growth Management Act. And looking at a particular focus on the IPAT and TransAlta zones. So we kind of have this base that we're looking at. And I guess some of the questions that you're going to find on the sheet is, are we heading in the right direction? Are there just ideas and things that we should be covering? So what we're hoping is you can just go through that first section for land use, rural, and housing over the next 10 minutes and just write down the questions, your ideas. You don't have to write this in policy form, and you don't have to be an expert in all things planning to be able to give us ideas. Our job is to take your ideas and try to get them in draft policies and then bring them back to you. We're just looking for the things that we need to be able to be focused on, the information that we may not know. So Mindy, is it just appropriate maybe just open it for about 10 minutes to be working on?
Yeah, so we've paired you guys up. So we wanted you to discuss this with your neighbors and share your ideas and brainstorm. But as Clay said, please do jot things down. We'd like to collect this back from you. Try to use better handwriting than I personally ever do because no one can ever read what I write. So then that way we can capture it in writing. And then after 10 minutes, we're going to report back out. So we will go around the room. So we'll have you report back out. Yes, Frank.
To make it easier and to make everybody feel comfortable, it's okay to be on a first name basis here. We don't have to worry about titles and positions, so let's enjoy these exercises.
And if you have questions, we're here to answer questions and be here to help. So.
And you said you were going to collect this, but I would encourage you to email all this to us after the meeting so that we can actually have some time to think about it and maybe could provide
Absolutely.
thoughtful, because, in 10 minutes, I'm going to be having a hard time. thinking,
Yes.
Not too much.
There's
But by tomorrow, I'll have more.
Yes, you may always share more with us at any point ever. We're all ears. Yeah, if something comes to you, like for some reason, I always think of things in the shower when I can't write them down. So that's fine. We're going to report out. Yep. And Joel's taking notes through Padlet. So he's going to do notes there. We'll have these, we'll put everything together. It'll come back out in your, as part of your meeting notes. So you guys will see the results of this as well. Okay. So we will go until Gretchen will be putting up with you. And we will be back at 6:35 for report out. And if you feel like you need to move to the back or something, if it's too close to here, feel free to move. 10 minutes for this page 1. Good luck, go. Yep, this is session 1.
Mindy, I don't know if you want to pick the rotation here of who wants to go first, or we have volunteers that kind of want to share maybe some of the thoughts and ideas that they have. Duh.
Yeah, I'll just do it just because we didn't finish the assignment because we got sidetracked. And I don't want to get to the end of this and look like the, you know, bad children. That's right. That's right. The first one on the land use and rural, we didn't have anything missing from the list. At least we didn't get that. What did you?
I didn't come up. with
No.
anything.
But we did get to a definition and the intent of the statement of focus large-scale development near I-5. And so we think that needs some serious clarification and then, you know, some backup to what exactly we're talking about there. Well, so I'm looking at it from, well, why can't I have an industrial development in Morton? Why can't I have one on another corridor, you know, someplace else off of I-5? So I guess that's kind of a red flag to me. I mean, obviously we want to keep those for the ability to keep traffic and so forth, especially large truck traffic. It's not ideal, but right, we're not shouldn't be just limited to the I-5 corridor.
You know, thank you, Commissioner. I agree. Bob Russell, I think that's a great discussion because focus large scale development. I think you need to write code that promotes development, but I don't know that you need to target it places. I know where this came from. This comes from people that live in the country that say put it all next to I-5. But I'm with the commissioner. I'm working industrial development and it's not near I-5. It's wood products and it's going, yeah, it might be here, but it might also be in Morton or Packwood. So if we write code that promotes development, I don't want it to target necessarily I-5 and close down something, but I don't know if that's what the commissioner was getting at.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of clarify what we talked about, you know, I don't know that we dislike it as an idea necessarily, but it's just lacking a lot of clarity and definition. So, you know, are we talking industrial, commercial, residential? When we talk about large scale development, that could mean a lot of stuff. And, you know, near, I don't know what near means. And if we're talking about I-5, yeah, if we're
Right,
talking about
right.
I-5, are we really, is the intent there just major arteries, or, you know, a lot of our county does go east of I-5. That's a large part of it. So, yeah, so I think that was our biggest.
Right. And are we doing, do you want just the first one or you want the second one too? What's your preference? Okay. And that one we completely did not get to, except for I'm going to as well take exception with explore ways to reduce tax burden on low income and senior citizens. We already have a senior citizens deferment, and I am not into redistribution of wealth, and I would absolutely not want to support exploring ways to reduce tax burdens, because here's the reality of tax burden. When my neighbor doesn't pay it, I pay more. That is what happens with the distribution of property tax. And so I think we should be very careful about using those kind of things in the planning process to identify how we're going to change the tax base.
How do you justify someone's taxes going up because their neighbor builds $1 million house next door to them? So all of a sudden the neighborhood is a more expensive place to live for everybody in it, even regardless of improvements that you've made or
So
not made.
if we were to ask our assessor to come over here, he would tell you that absolutely doesn't happen, because it is comparable by the house that you own. So if I have a 1,200 square foot home,
Right, yeah,
right,
I understand.
I'm only
yeah.
valued at my 1,200. I do get what you're saying, Gretchen, is that obviously as developed, Packwood's a good example of that. Those prices all continue to ratchet up because of low availability and so forth, and it does drag everybody up. But overall, you're not supposed to, shouldn't be apples to oranges.
Right. I would like to continue to explore ways that less impact the resident population just based on what a visiting population does in our community. I don't want to shut down ways, exploring ways to reduce the tax burden in my community anyway. I'm not talking about redistribution of wealth or whatever, but just maybe a more realistic assessment. Maybe it's going to have to come down to calling residences what they are and calling short-term rentals what they are, which is a business.
Right, I
not
get
a-
what you're
not a
getting.
residence.
Right.
Sorry, Jeff.
Well, I'd just like to point out that every property is market-based. And it has been market-based as long as we've lived. It's going to
on
continue.
fire in Packwood.
It's going to continue being
Yeah.
market-based.
Yeah.
So,
think
I
it's
mean, just is.
What, it seems like one way we might reduce taxes is bring in businesses that generate lots of taxes. I got a call the other day from a company that wants to talk about putting a $450 million sustainable aviation fuel. I'm not saying that'll work. I'm just saying if a company comes in that spends $400 million, a lot of our tax problems get shared with other people, so maybe there's, if we,
Yeah, so
development.
when we get to economic development, which is one of the things, let's talk more about that. We got through one,
not yet, we got critical areas and floodplain.
yeah, but we got through
Oh,
one group's
Yeah,
report.
so,
out.
so we're done, right?
Yeah.
We're done.
So we're moving on to the next group report out of what you've shared, what you came up with, just in session one.
We had two discussions. We also had a hard time getting to housing, but we got it in the first one. We got caught up in this whole rural character, maintain rural character discussion. What is rural character? And it was great that the two was actually Gretchen and I, because we always debate this but Gretchen, why don't you talk a little about?
Oh. I guess from my perspective, rural character is not an aesthetic. It's not it shouldn't be based on somebody driving through our community and looking at picturesque 5-acre pieces of property that are well maintained. It is more about the feeling of a place and the community of a place. And it's a lifestyle that a group of people that are living in the same place choose to share. And it's getting hard. We're starting to have conversations about, placing Packwood as a UGA. There's a lot of tension between density and maintaining rural character. If we're a UGA or if we get the sewer, we're allowed more density. There's a lot of pushback on that because apartments are not rural in some people's minds. But I think I don't know. So that's my Packwood perspective on rural character, that density doesn't have to be the antithesis of rural character.
And the crunch came because my issue is, I don't think just because we live in Lewis County that every person ought to be able to live out rurally. I think it's expensive, and I think they need to be near resources, some people. So I don't have as a goal, I don't think our goal should even be to write code that makes it possible for everybody to live everywhere they want to live. However, Gretchen sold me on this rural character thing, that it does make a difference. There are people that choose not to have a lot of money, but they want to live in a rural area. So your job's a lot harder. The code's got to be, I think. So anyway, we talked rural, and I think that's done. There's a distinction. The other one is the floodplains critical areas. Okay, here's my beef on this, is that the resources to do critical areas and protect them in Lewis County are held by the county. My experience as a minor wetland scientist working in the different communities, Napa Vine, Centralia, Chehalis, and the county, is they don't have the resources to protect, and they don't even have the staff. And so stuff happens. So I think this is an opportunity for the county to lead and we can write some code. And let me give you an example. And I told her, and it happened to me, that if I wrote a wetland report to the city and they didn't like it, they didn't send it to my friends in the county that could then tell me, hey, Bob, you need to clarify something. They called the state. And the state came down here. And I'm like, since when does the city not live in the county? Right? I understand you have tension, but you can't do that. We're out here trying to do business. And there isn't a businessman here that wants the state called in. So I want code written that sort of helps us in some of the cities that when they have trouble, they can maybe go to the county. So anyway, I want critical areas protected, but
Makes
We
sense.
want the cities to bring stuff to the county
yeah.
first.
So you're
before
going to
the
run
state.
headlong into the actual state law that requires, like Department of Ecology, who is the head of that for wetlands, right? That's going to be the issue.
For what? I mean, if
For
the
that
city,
review, for the technical review, you're either going to have to go to the court for a jurisdictional determination, or you're going to have to go to the Department of Ecology.
no, I'm just saying, sir, if the city, if I live in Napavine and I go to the Napavine County and they don't know how to look up using GIS, how to do the critical areas and protect it, then I'm going to put a culvert in my property. And my experience is some of those people in these areas, they don't have that. So it ought to be if there are critical areas on your property and they can't tell you accurately, they should not call the state in. They should maybe go to the county.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is just shared resources.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's a
There you
total,
go.
and there's a total opportunity that we have where we can share resources with our smaller jurisdictions. So I think that's an important thing for us to continue to explore because we can do that, right? Like two jurisdictions can get together and hire a consultant that they both use on call as they want to. So I think shared resources, it's particularly important in our county with our very small jurisdictions because they have a huge deficit of staff, right? They just don't have people who can run things. So
We could write a
but-
policy directly on that.
yeah, we can write a policy on shared resources and we can look for ways to do it. But we also use the state as our third-party reviewer. So,
Well,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. But when the
Whatever
city of
our
Chehalis is using data that's like 8 years old and telling inspectors, how to do their reports using 8-year-old data, it needs to be updated.
All right, next group, report out.
We get to say,
Oh.
But we didn't, so we don't get the report. We didn't get-
All right, so we did look at the focus large scale development near I-5 and do agree that really that should be on our major commercial corridors, including 12. Things like that, but to rezone around I-5 to facilitate intense development. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you could probably draw a line 1 or 2 miles on each side of I-5 and just be like, that needs to be high density. Because the reality is that you don't need your cattle escaping onto I-5. That makes a mess. What actions should the county consider to achieve priorities in terms of development out of floodplains, critical areas, updating the flood maps to reflect the floods that happened in the 2000s, because those are reality. Also working on municipal water and sewer availability in Lammerts. For housing, yeah, we butted heads on this one too. So bringing up veteran housing tax relief graduated by disability. And my counter to that was, okay, do we want to push that off onto young families who are just getting started? Because it's not that tax requirement goes away, that collection requirement goes away. It just gets shifted more intensely onto somebody that doesn't have means to avoid it. What actions should the county consider to achieve priorities? Improving development standards, easing the burden on creating clustered development in rural areas, and shifting from property tax to sales tax where possible.
So my only addition to that is Texas has a very generous program for veterans as well as for seniors and low-income people, graduated property tax. So perhaps maybe there's some lessons that can be learned there. And, the VA already has, their disability assessments for veterans. Very familiar with those. So based on a veteran's disability rating, they could be able to get some property tax relief. But Lindsay mentioned about maybe transitioning more towards a sales tax based government economy, which I think is a great idea, mainly because it is the property tax pinch that people are feeling in Lewis County the most. And we can't just like cut everybody's property taxes without cutting services drastically. Well, what services do we want to give up? I'm smart enough to know that if you're going to cut your income, you got to cut your expenses. And we don't have a lot of fat in Lewis County. It seems like, to the property owner, and myself included, our property taxes keep going up, and it's, the older I get, the more it's going to hurt. So I'm thinking, perhaps maybe transitioning to another sort of tax base would help ease the property tax burden. And so that was, I think, one of our great takeaways that I really appreciated Commissioner Pollack mentioning. So. Oh, and we didn't do housing yet, did we? Oh, that was it. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about also encouraging a diversity of housing options, which I've mentioned on the Planning Commission before, where we focus on affordable housing. But the thing is, affordable is defined differently by different people in their stages of life and their ability to produce an income. So, instead of focusing on just low income housing, let's, keep a big picture, by developing all sorts of housing so that people who, can afford to move up to the mega mansions can do so. And those that, are in the middle class would like just a nice, a bigger place can find one. And that makes room for somebody in the, lower income brackets to be able to move up into something better. And that then opens up a lot of inventory and the low income aspect. So yes, we need more low income housing. I'm all for it, but I don't think we should just limit our focus to just low income, because there's needs for more. And of course, the bigger houses, the more expensive houses produce more income, to the county. So that's why we want a diversity of housing options, in my opinion.
We didn't get much either, mainly because it was a big teaching moment for me, because I jumped into this a few months ago. I've only been here since March, I think. So I was lucky enough to dive headfirst right into this whole thing. So it was nice to be able to converse back and forth and talk about a lot of this stuff. But the nice thing about being 3/4 of the way down the line is hearing everybody else speak, which kind of gives me some ideas and things. With the large scale development near I-5, I think you have a good point of there's more space other than I-5, but I think if we can word something in a way so that the development can take place on the major arterials and not like on the backside of a city with 2-lane roads where you have semi trucks all day long backing up the stoplights. Down Highway 12, there's a lot of good things. Morton area, Highway 12 being a major arterial, and even, Highway 6 could potentially be another one. So I think not limiting it to I-5, but I think wording it in a way that, you have to have, either a minimum traffic standard or something that, so you're not, running semi trucks 24 hours a day through residential streets and things. I think that would be a good thing. And then with the critical areas, I have kind of a personal beef with that, because I ran into going to the city or the county and saying, I want to build this here. And they're like, well, it shows there's a wetland here. It's like, but there's not. I can prove to you there's not. Well, our map says it is, so if you say no, you're gonna have to prove it to us. So I have to go out, spend a few $100s, get a wetland study done and say, I told you so. Oh, well, our maps haven't been updated in so long that that's just what we go by. So it's like, well, that's, for me, I've been in construction most of my life, so I can see these things. Johnny, a homeowner off the street that's gonna build their dream home, they're gonna have to jump through all these extra hoops because city, county, whoever has resources that are so far out of date that they're gonna leave it up to them to spend more money to figure out this stuff instead of the jurisdiction being like, yes, we have these resources that are up to date, and go from there. So I think the floodplains and critical areas could probably use some attention. And same, the stuff that Bob said, I agree with. And then, did you have anything? I know you got a bail, but.
We also dialogued a little bit about, how to ensure infrastructure keeps up with development. We're Roger owns some properties in the UGA that we discussed. And so, finding ways, creative ways to, ensure that there are funding sources to try to provide that infrastructure and where growth could be allowed, lacking infrastructure, lacking the sewer, water, road capacity, that we dialogued quite a bit about. And then we also had conversations related to the housing piece about the tax burden, how to equitably do that while without, dramatically being required to reduce services to the community. So kind of piggybacking on what everybody else had dialogued about.
Yeah, and we had kind of a short conversation too about the short-term rentals. You can put something in place that says you can only do it here. But how are you going to govern that? What are you going to, how do you know that that house is a short-term rental or not? Just because they didn't sign a piece of paper, you do a permit system that says, okay, if you have a permit, you can do short-term rental. Well, we all know there's people out there that are going to be like, my house, I can do whatever I want. And being out in Packwood, property and housing is kind of at a premium and it's only going to get worse. And so, possibly reaching out, I'm sure there's other places that have already experienced this and have already found some way to regulate it, remedy it, or whatever. And so I think trying to figure out who else has already kind of dove into that and see what the results were, to do that. So I think that's all I have.
Sorry, I'm new here. Same stuff you all said, we're kind of unsure of what this means and what we're doing. We had a few thoughts though, and being last is pretty handy because I come up with other ideas.
Yeah.
How many have been near Cardinal Glass? Anybody know where that is? Okay, that's not on I-5. It's one of the largest developments in the area, and it's beautifully positioned on Highway 12. Highway 12 has a different name in that area, but that's what it is. And that's where it is. I mean, developments like that are fabulous.
It's really close to I-5 though. I would basically say it's on.
Yeah, but you have to get out on I-12 and drive down the road and you'll get there.
A short jaunt on Avery, but.
They have an elk herd that comes by there.
Mhm.
I see them every once in a while. I mean, so, being thoughtful about what we do, I think is pretty important. What else? What other right idea did we have? Land speculation is a real big issue. Where are the urban boundaries? And if you drive down the road these days and you see tall grass, weeds, brush. We had a fire in Winlock. And that's what it was, you know, the druggies got into a house, burned the house down, burned the field down. But all of that is based on land speculation, based on zoning, urban growth area that we put in. You know, so again, I said this before, I think we need to be a little bit wise about what we're doing. That whole area, thousands of acres of land speculation, if it ever gets developed, it'll be a very long time. And again, it's all market-based. It's, the jurisdiction hasn't built a house that I know of. It's all developer-based, market-based, and it has to make financial sense for the developer, or nothing happens. People don't get housing unless somebody wants to build it. I put down clear urban limits. You know, where does it start? Where does it stop? Yes, dear.
Okay, I agree with that. Because it kind of piggybacks on Gretchen's well thought out concept of rural character. Because I never really thought of it that way, but I think you're more right than wrong, that rural character isn't just having a nice landscape that people from out of the area can drive through, or even we can drive through, because everybody, well, a vast majority of the people that I talk to would prefer to live on 1 acre, not 10, because they don't want to have to mow it and keep it up. But they do like to, you know, be out in the country but it's more, they like that feel of that community, I think. And so, with that in mind, when you say that you're going to put, if that's what it's actually saying, that you're going to focus your, it says focus large scale development near I-5. Well, obviously that's where a lot of the commercial should be. There's no question about that. And that's probably fairly easy to change by, you know, rezoning and whatnot. I don't know what the special interest conflicts would be on that from out of the area, but that's pretty easy to do. But if you do something like Cardinal Glass, that particular project right there, demanded water from Winlock, and they brought the water out to the thing, which really now has set Winlock up with a water line that
Didn't
goes.
they have a well out there? I see a big tank up in the sky.
Well, the water comes from Winlock somewhere along
Yeah,
Hawkins
right.
Road all the way out to Cardinal Glass.
Yeah.
And so really Winlock is set up for beautifully to grow that area at some point in the future. And that's because of the little Cardinal Glass that's there.
Except they don't have enough water.
Well, they just got to do a little bit more work on that. But to put everything all in one, you know, concentrated on one area, you know, you kind of have to visualize when you drive down to California, what do you like to look at? Do you, you know, it's everything along the freeway. Or, you know, I went to Utah and they had little campuses along the freeway of high-rise commercial buildings of some sort. And you could see paths there, and they probably had little coffee stands and stuff. And I thought, oh, now that's very inviting. We don't have to be the, whatever you call those large tip up warehouse capital of the world. So we kind of have to keep that in mind too. Yeah. And I agree with him also, affordable housing, the market's going to determine that. We're not going to do much. The state and probably the federal government has chosen to mandate so many energy codes to serve the climate change agenda that there's no way you're going to be able to build an inexpensive house without subsidies. And the fact that everybody wants to live in Washington all of a sudden, and why wouldn't they? has driven the land price up. So, you know, how are you going to counteract that?
So I want to do a quick time check. Sorry. And I'm not trying to stifle conversation because this is really, really good. We have 3 more sessions.
Ooh,
And if we run
Okay.
each session at 45 minutes, y'all, we're going to be here till 11. So I'm just, again, not trying to stifle, but we do need to focus our attention so that we can, so Jeff, close us out of this and then we're going to move on.
I just wanted to
Closing
add,
word.
I just wanted to add water.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we can dream up all kinds of things, but if we don't have the water.
May I say, it didn't come up in our conversation because we didn't get to it, but I think it's extremely, extremely imperative that the commissioners take a stand and short-term rentals and define them and follow through with that land use regulation in the code. Because currently transient housing is not allowed in most of our community by our code. And this is not being taken seriously, I don't feel like, by anybody down here. And I think it's really, really important to anybody I talk to in our community, every single person I talk to in our community, and it's not getting the attention by the BOCC, I think. And I don't mean to be so frank and demanding, but I hear it every single day, and I would like that to be addressed in this update, at least defined, at least have the
So
words
let me,
in the
let me,
code.
yeah, so let me clarify this and then I do want to move us on because I think we could spin on short-term rental for a long time, which right, which is any of these
Right.
issues we could spend a long time. So short-term rentals are just a single family use in our code. Somebody builds a house, that's what it is. So single family uses, anywhere that's allowed, it's allowed. If they were defined as a transient use, as a commercial transient use, the way that we look at hotel, motel, bed and breakfast, there would be a number of residential zones where they would not be allowed unless if it was a special use permit, because we don't allow transient uses in those residential areas. So that's what Gretchen is getting at. The High Valley area is an RCC that does not allow transient uses, but because short-term rentals are a residential use, even though they aren't, they're a commercial use, they're allowed outright. If they're defined differently, they would be special use permit. I'm not advocating either way or the other. I'm just explaining a little bit about why the code, why you're mentioning it that way in the code. So but I do want to put a pin in STR because I think this is such a hot topic. We could go a long time. So I don't want to not come back to it, just not right this second.
That's fine. Our code says
Yeah.
one thing and our community is experiencing a different thing. So that needs to be clarified. Please.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's a big, big, big issue. It's a big
Whichever way
issue.
you go on it, it just needs to
Yeah.
be in the books.
Are we ready to move on to the next topic?
Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So almost as much fun, we can talk about transportation and capital facilities and utilities. Capital facilities, things like making sure we have water and sewer in schools and all of those things that make sure they're there when we have growth, and utilities as well, our transportation network. So some of the high level changes that we're looking at, increase, some ideas, increase transit options throughout the county, especially probably closer to where we have people living and working. Establish new ways for wayfinding and signage to promote safety, community character, recreation and tourism. New coordination policies introduced in the capital facilities element, including coordinating on data and asset inventory, especially with our smaller like fire districts and water and sewer districts that we're trying to make sure that they can be prepared as growth occurs, but they don't have a lot of resources. Establish process to reassess the land use patterns if funding falls short. That's actually a requirement in the Growth Management Act, that if you don't have the capital facilities there as growth is occurring and your levels of service drop, that you reassess your growth patterns. I just pull this up. New energy and sustainability policies have been looked at. New goal to promote restoration and construction of schools to provide community services. New goals for broadband expansion as well. So those are some of the ideas that have come up thus far. Again, we've got some questions. Maybe we'll do like 8 minutes or something and then come back.
Yeah, so so I want you guys to talk again amongst yourself. Joel passed out the slides to everybody, so you have the slide stuff. I was remiss in saying this before, but the summaries that are on your worksheet are summaries of what the public has said as their identified priorities. right? So when you were asking some of the questions about why did people say that? Well, the public doesn't define things easily for me when they are filling out surveys and so forth. So I think that leaves it up to us to have those conversations. And then the slides is what some of the high level proposed changes that Clay has already identified that we would be looking at making. So let's go 10 minutes and then we will try to hone our group discussion a little bit. So we're out of here before 11. So go ahead and group up. Do you want to select a group you'd like to join? Okay. we're gonna do a report out. I'll get my microphone back on here. On transportation capital facilities and utilities, we're gonna start in the opposite direction. Yeah, I'm looking at this group here. Is gonna get to go first. How, I don't want to stifle anybody's conversation because actually that last conversation, although it went along, was very good and helpful, I believe, for us in terms of helping hone the conversation. So I don't necessarily want to stifle it, but also I don't think people want to be here terribly late. So the kind of the ways we can go about this is we can go around the same way that we did and let the conversation be a little bit more back and forth and conversational. But that means we're probably not going to get to all the topics tonight, which means y'all are going to have homework. Right? Because I'm going to say, great, but now you're going to have to email me in the next couple of days with your answers to these questions instead. Or we can do a little more lightning round, kind of just say what your high level were, and we won't have as much discussion or debate. So either way is fine with me, how you guys want to do it. I think we can get stuff out of it. So it's kind of up to you.
I would be, I guess a third option is finish this one the way we're doing, but do 3 and 4, all of us together when you open them up, rather than go away and do 10 minutes and then come back,
We can give it a
It's-
shot.
do that
Yeah, we can give it
together.
shot.
It's
Yeah,
just a
we can give it
thought.
shot. Okay.
Okay.
So you guys go first.
All right, we actually didn't write a whole bunch about this different thing, but everybody agreed we need improved traffic flow where we need it, like Rush Road. He's got some ideas in Wenlock that, needs some help. Getting on the freeway, obviously the freeway has some problems, but we don't have any opinion on what the county could do to fix all of that. We just, well, I don't know if we all agreed, but the idea of increasing transit to East Lewis County and stuff, it seems silly to me because I don't think anybody's really even riding it around Lewis County, but it seems like we could come up with way less expensive options. I think if you really researched what it costs a person to ride on Twin Transit, it's extremely, extremely expensive. I just don't think we're there yet. When everybody gets shoved into the city, then then we'll probably be there. But you can't say we want rural character and we're going to service it as though it's the city. It's rural. So that was kind of our thought on that.
I think that's very well, but yeah.
And then on the infrastructure, keeping pace with the growth and all of that. Well, the cell service, I know people are placing those cell service towers so that private people will take care of that. The waste and recycling, I know the county is researching things to do with that currently. So I kind of think we've already got all those kind of things going. I don't really know what we need to improve to do that. We didn't have any really ideas to improve it.
Jump over to your group.
Okay. We we talked about public transit and we weren't necessarily all gung ho with buses and so forth either. But I did like the idea that we kicked around about private sector opportunities of, encouraging Uber and Lyft, and entrepreneurs to be able to come in and provide transportation services, and that'll allow for people to be self-employed and gainfully employed, and then driver assist features, would certainly be nice on cars that are capable of that. Did you want to enlighten on that or expand on that?
That there will be some degree of downward pressure on public transportation when you have older folks being able to stay in their vehicles longer. And so with driver assist features that are coming on, you will find folks in less need of transit support.
So we also discussed then what actions should the county consider to achieve these priorities, and impact fees, was certainly one of them for development. And improved coordination between county, city, and urban growth areas, improved development standards, and contract engineering for I-5. We did talk quite a bit about I-5. You know, we have one major arterial through this county, north and south, and basically one going east and west, 12 and 6, of course, but you know, we don't have a lot of ways around that when the traffic is backed up or flooded or whatever. You know, we are landlocked in this county. We have nowhere to go. And so we need options. And I think that that should be a priority of the county. You know, where we have frontage roads, make them longer, you know, make them, you know, I would love personally, we didn't talk about this, but I would personally like to see a truck route, you know, so that trucks can bypass, you know, or go through the area without impediment, you know, to the rest of the people that are using the freeways. But, and then moving on to capital facilities and utilities, we spent more time on communications, but I'll just read the list that Lindsay wrote down here. Incineration at TransAlta for recycling purposes and so forth. I think that there's value in incineration, unfortunately, given our current state government's view on burning and things like that. It's probably going to be an uphill battle, but incineration in many other countries around the world is done very cleanly and efficiently and also generates electricity. You know, so if they're going to keep taking away our ability to generate power, you know, perhaps maybe this is a way that we can utilize waste with our recycling efforts. Continued broadband advocacy. I've done that personally, and I know the county has been advocating for that. We need to really push this until we get everybody covered in Lewis County with broadband. If we're going to participate in the world economy and improve the tax base here and improve everybody's lot in life and to create more jobs, this is going to be one surefire way to do it. And it will also go a long way towards helping with traffic problems if people can work from home. We need to prioritize funding for communication systems, and that is hopefully in the works. But we want to advocate for more communications grant and match requirements for improved infrastructure for communications in the area. Water, sewer extensions outside of UGAs, that would be great. You know, that is really a hindrance to a lot of things that we want to do in Lewis County is water and sewer. It keeps coming down to water and sewer. You know, and we can tie just about everything to water and sewer. You know, well, by golly, let's prioritize water and sewer and let's get some infrastructure out there. Amen. Can I get an amen?
Okay, next group.
Well, one of the issues with that is like situations, there's one right now in West Lewis County, you've got PL, they've got an effective water system, and you have homes that people are trying to build just outside the city. And it is incredibly expensive and sometimes just not possible to get a good freshwater well out there. So they can't build their home, even though there's water across the street.
Microphone.
Under transportation, the only thing we agreed with everybody else, but we did talk about eliminating arterials. I heard Frank say arterials, I-5 is an arterial, Highway 12 is an arterial. And what we were saying is the arterials I've heard from consultants are the arterials that come between Chehalis and Centralia and actually downtown Chehalis. And both those people, those firms talk about in order to create community, they should get rid of arterials. So I thought that was,
well, and thank you. Maybe I should clarify. So my understanding of arterials is the major traffic,
yeah.
You know, mode through an area, you know, which is undoubtedly I-5, but.
And I guess the consultants we listen to on town, we're talking about if you want a downtown area, then don't run one-way traffic through it at 35 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah.
You know, do it. So.
Yeah. I see
so
what you're saying.
that's the only thing. Oh, we did have a question on one of these steps was a new goal to promote restoration and construction of schools to provide community services. What is that? New goal to promote restoration and construction of schools to provide community services.
Would that be like
Trump-
Ari Bennett being turned into apartments?
That's what I mentioned to her, is that they
No,
had
it's
done
not,
that.
yeah, I don't think that's what they're talking about. Yeah, it's community services that schools provide. So schools are not just schools. They also are where kids play Little League and they've got community meetings associated with them. They're often where we go during evacuations. People are sent to schools. So it's making sure that schools are providing the full breadth of community services, particularly in rural areas where you don't have a lot of facilities like that, right? So your senior center may be a long ways away, but your schools may not be as far. So I think that's where we're going with it. And I think a lot of that came out of our natural hazard mitigation planning discussions as well, where we need to utilize our schools as centers during natural hazard issues. So, yeah. Next group.
Thought I'd impress you, sir.
The only thing that I think we're going to cover, we already heard most everything that we were talking about. I want to give you the different perspective on the Lewis County Transit, on the transit issue, just because I sit on that board. There are a lot of monies to the tunes of millions of dollars, and I would never sit here and argue with you that it pencils or that it pays or that it is a proper use of taxpayers' dollars. With that said, those outside resources from both the federal government and the state government are pouring millions of dollars into Lewis County for transit. That's both with new technology of hydrogen buses and the expansion of those routes. It's already here. It's going to get even larger as we go on. We just actually tonight did the approval of the long-range plan for that transit. It will go all the way out there. It will actually go all the way into areas like the ski area, Mount Rainier. That's the plan. That is part of what's taken place. As far as the senior and disabled citizens, that's already being done. We do a lot of there are numerous trips that happen every day back and forth out of East County that transit is already providing, bringing people to doctor's appointments in Walmart and so on and so on. And so just realize that a lot of that is outside. So Lewis County Transit is its own entity, has access to these dollars. The Climate Commitment Act is pushing a lot of that money into these transit systems. And that is largely outside.
Yeah, and I guess I would also just support with, I go to a lot of those very remote communities frequently to have conversations with them. And the people in those remote communities are asking for services. They are saying they need and want the transit service beyond just the DART service, which is which is a great service, particularly for like doctor's appointments. DART is really good. But what I'm hearing from the community out there is they want the service, and it isn't up to par for them. So that's what people in Mineral are saying and what people in Packwood are saying.
Can I ask a question about Highway 12? Has there been any discussion about expanding that, widening it, improving it? Frank's right.
That actually was the other thing we had on here was Highway
I've
12
thought about that
improvements
for years. I
both
mean, that's the
safety.
solution to a lot of things.
It's like talking to that wall over there, Jeff, right? When we talk to DOT and all they want to say, well, we're patching it, right? Or, last year we did the big stretch that wasn't even the worst stretch of the highway.
It's currently closed, by the way.
You're preaching to the,
In some places.
I get it. You're preaching to the choir there. And yeah, DOT is just very difficult. Obviously, we find the same thing now. I've got people calling me this last week about I-5 slowing down now beyond just
My wife
Sunday
is currently
afternoons, right?
stuck on I-5 trying to get down here.
And I mean, don't all these things just essentially come down to a lot more money and a lot more people to carry it out? I mean, there's not an amount of code or paper that we're going to produce that's
No,
going to
there's-
do
it's more than
anything.
that. It's more than that. And I've talked
Unless we can
about
start
this.
producing
I've
money.
talked about this before. We
We
have
could
an
do
awful
that.
lot of use and very little usable land. All of the river valleys provide an opportunity for a road, but they flood, and the hills and the mountains you can't use. So we've overgrown the land that we have available. Now we're trying to use farmland and come up with creative solutions. Well, may not.
So, but to go back to your question about like, does it just take more money and more people? I mean, yes, everything just takes more money and more people, more infrastructure, because the world does, like, so much of land use planning is just based on, do you have water to flush your toilet and do you have water to drink? That's like the base of planning. But I think what Clay said earlier is where this goes in the plan is what's critical. So when we do the planning work, it's coming up with the policies and then taking those policies and putting them into what can we achieve in the next couple of years? What can we achieve in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? And who is in charge of achieving that? And are they engaged in the conversation to do it? So that's kind of, once we get it together, then we start doing that honing. And there will be things that we will take out of the list because there's nobody who can own it and nobody who has the money. So maybe it's a great idea that we all love, but it's just not going to end up in our plan. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is that, I mean, it would just be great if we were able to catch up to where we're currently at now. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
would
I
be
mean,
really
and I
nice
think
if we could
that's,
catch up,
I
yeah.
think that's an audacious goal by itself. And not through the fault of, I mean, we've had so many different folks come through all the years, and I personally think we have a lot of great people now, but it's a gargantuan task with not a lot of money and not a lot of staff just to get to where we are thinking ahead of things that are happening. And so that's my little thing. But I mean, it just seems like if we could just define the codes that we have a little more clearly without over defining and boxing people in so tight that they can't move. If we could get infrastructure that would even service what's currently in the UGAs and what's currently on the books. And to be able to spend the money to put the people in place to hire the most qualified people, to compensate the people who are doing great work now, if we could have that money and those people, and we could retain our best talent instead of losing them constantly.
You're on the
a
Citizens
tough one.
Budget Committee, correct?
Am I?
Right? You're on our Citizens Budget Committee, right?
Are
Yeah.
you putting me on
yeah.
it right now?
Can we just appoint to the,
I mean, obviously, this is the kind of stuff I see all the time. So, I mean, this is all nice, but I kind of feel like, man, we could just catch up. We've got years worth of catch up to do, it feels like. And so anyways,
No,
that's my 2 cents.
Nope, that's a great goal. I mean, I think that's a lot of what we're doing in there is that.
I think
is
it
that,
would be
so-
nice too, to have a low hanging fruit
Yes.
list, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Just as an example, exit 72, I take it every day, multiple times a day. Those ramps are already wide enough for 2 lanes, yet there's always a truck that's gonna go right down the middle of the on-ramp or the off-ramp. And where 2 lanes of cars could split off, one going left, one going right, but yet there's a truck right in the middle.
So are we
because
getting
they
a
don't
bucket
wanna-
of paint tonight and heading out there?
Yeah, they don't want to go across the solid white or yellow lines, and I'm like, that's an easy fix. Let's go out there and paint the doggone thing and let's make 2 lanes out of it right now.
I agree with Clay. We're going to get our paint. When we're done there, we're going to roll out to Packwood and put in one really good crosswalk by the brewery. And then just stick a flashlight out there because, oh my God.
Yeah. and-
Okay, let's,
So,
so that was excellent, you guys. You guys did your conversation and your report out in 30 minutes. Nice work. If we do that again, we're going to get through this, which is good because I think this is important. So you guys self-regulated perfectly. So let's move on to our next slide, which is resource lands and natural environment.
All right, so as was Mindy described, what's on your sheet, it's what we've heard for some of the community. It's on the slide, or some things that we know that we're going to focus on, at least in some of the draft policies. Love some feedback. Preserving resource lands, it's a requirement of the Growth Management Act. A lot of your policies already direct to it. Mineral lands, forest lands, ag lands. Revise resource land policies to be concise, feasible, and measurable. All the things we've talked about. If there's things that you're wanting to do, like protect our agricultural lands, but provide farmers options to be able to have businesses that support their agricultural uses. Like, what does that mean? And how do you do it, kind of thing? Ensure natural environment policy discourage development in and protect critical areas. Looking for opportunities to address things like flooding. We did hear some comments tonight around, we can protect critical areas, but how do we make sure we're not, not utilizing those as impeding processes? We need to have good information to be able to help the public. And introduce further policies to mitigate risk to lives and property posed by wildfire. And again, you don't have to jump to those things always being regulations. Those can be things that you're just using some common sense things to be working with the general public. So between the two, now, I guess one thing, Mindy, we could either go through the next slide and go do them all at once, then come back for one conversation. And you could pick out a few things on either of the sheets. Does that sound good? Okay. So the next one would be, drum roll. Okay, economic development, climate, and resiliency. Again, you'll see feedback from the public and outreach that we've done on the sheet. Looking to improve the feasibility of economic development goals and policies, revised to be action-oriented. So we've heard like a lot of good ideas about things you want to focus on, but like, what are the measurable steps to go from where you are to where you want to go? There's even a comment about like, maybe not having policies that are, you have to maybe define the things that are low hanging fruit, the things we can get done versus maybe things that are more aspirational and long-term that you want to work on. Like, it's okay to have both, but at least you recognize that you have both. Yeah. And exactly. Like, some are going to be long-term strategies that you're trying to get somewhere. Something else is you want to accomplish X, and how are you going to do that? Align economic development goals and policies to revise land use policies. So you make sure that the things that you're saying in one area align with what you're doing over here. And then introduce policies that can assist with sustainability and resiliency and climate hazards. So we just talked a little bit about, utilizing schools as a place where you should go in climate, when you're having flooding or fire issues, but like, how do you get that into your plan? So those are a few of the ideas more on the sheet. So maybe, do we want to break up or just have three or 4 minutes at the table and then just have a round robin?
Yeah, I think it'd be good if we broke up and people had a second to just kind of hone their ideas together, and then we'll come back, but we'll do all of it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, people get really wrapped around the climate resiliency stuff. I just want to remind everybody that in our county, we are focused on hazard management around climate stuff. So all the time that we spent up to now, I know I haven't come back to share out with you guys the work that we've been doing with a lot of risk assessment and so forth, but it's very natural hazard based. And our highest hazards here are flood and wildfire. So so that will be where we're focusing. So I just want to make sure you guys know that going into that part of the conversation. So maybe go ahead and break up so you guys can get your thoughts together on these, and then we'll have a longer group discussion. Yeah, we'll do all of them.
Yeah, and then we're gonna put together drafts and then it's gonna go through a process and then we're gonna make revisions. And if you have more comments, I think somebody said earlier, can I send comments, tomorrow or the next day if something pops up as I'm driving home? Yes, please. So.
So yeah, why don't we just kind of do lightning round where each person just share 2, max 4 of your priorities. So that would be 1 from each if you want to hit all topics, or if you just want to focus on one topic, that's fine too. We'll do a lightning round. We'll try not to engage. It's so hard for us to not engage in discussions. And then we'll move on to our last few slides and close ourselves out. So we went this way. We'll go the other way, even though you didn't have a chance to have that conversation. But Commissioner Brummer, we'll just make you start. You've got 4 topics to choose from.
And you want just the priorities? Because I honestly, on all of these, I say yes, right? These are all good and something we should be focusing on and moving towards. The question and where the idea input is how we make that happen. Because I don't really disagree with any of both the session 4 and the last, or 3 and 4. And what's there. It's about the way we get there.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these things, if we just get out of people's way, it'll take care of themselves quite a bit in regard to timber and all that kind of stuff. Just don't create unnecessary barriers, but or eliminate unnecessary barriers. But the other one I know Bob and I talked about at one point was, we've got all these wetland areas that you can't build on, you can't do anything with. Is there a way to turn those into places that people can enjoy as a recreational space so that they're not only just not usable, but that there's some way to do something with that? We've talked about that. I thought it was a really cool idea. Just throwing it out there. If we opened that up to some sort of solution. And then the other thing that I'm always kind of big on is, which is weird because I've never lived on a farm or farmed or done anything, but I did grow up here, and I do believe it's like, to me, it's like the main thing that if you're gonna take one word and define the county, that would be one of the big ones. So I don't know how we do that. I know we've talked about just, to me, it's kind of like the short-term rental things. If we just start calling things what they actually are, that'd be great. If a farm's there, maybe you should just call it a farm. And maybe code it that way. The other argument that we talked about, which I think is totally legitimate too, though, just to destroy my own ideas, that that does have monetary consequences if you take somebody's land that's could be developable and they want to go sell it later on, and now you've switched it to agricultural. That has a huge financial impact on them and the value of their property. So I don't know which one of those ideas is the good one, but I think there's maybe neither of them. But yeah, I do think both those things at the same time. I don't know what the answer is, but maybe somebody smarter than me can figure that out.
We, under resources land, one of the things we wrote is under this increased recreational and tourism opportunities, we just put parentheses around there, not without infrastructure. So enough of that. Natural resources, protecting rivers. One of the things that in my salmon thing is I think the loggers do a really good job, and the feds are after them, and they have a lot of people looking after them. But protecting stuff when it gets broken to 20 acres and smaller is when we need to do more education. So we put signage under that natural resources. Perhaps that's the county's responsibility to help let people know that there's salmon in streams, so they'll quit throwing culverts in them. I wrote, got to get out of the floodplain at least 3 times for these 4 things. So while I have the commissioners here, some of us have talked offline about UGAs versus how does that happen? And we get educated. And one of the things Mindy has told me is that, Bob, in a small town, when you're growing and you need a UGA, what happens is some landowner comes to you and says, I've got land and let's make it in the UGA. And I said, well, what's different about that? And she says, well, look, think about Portland. In Portland, that's not how they do it. If the Portland wants to go east or west, they don't care who the winners and losers are. They just pick it and they go that way. So we got this floodplain and all these UGAs that keep getting handed to us are floodplain. They're all this flat stuff, right? And we have men already and women going up the hill a little south or north of town. And so one of the things that we've been looking at on the maps, and I probably have sent something to at least one commissioner before, is the top of this hill up here has between Coal Creek and Logan Hill and the Alpha Road has hundreds, probably thousands of acres up there. Maybe it's 550. But my point is, we need a road to the top of the hill. We got a city that can't put infrastructure in because they need money. And so they got to write grants. And you said something, Clay, is maybe we ought to think 20 years in advance. Maybe we ought to work together to get some grant money. Well, wow. How about if the county said 20 years from now, city of Chehalis, you ought to be on top of the hill. And they help, steer that so that we can get out of this floodplain and maybe get up on top of the hill. So I will tell you that if you look at the topography, there's a really nice route already to the top of the hill that's just down Jackson Highway about a half a mile. And we should think about that sometime. So,
And there's a huge opportunity zone for what I don't know, all up around Logan Hill.
opportunity zone up there?
Yeah.
I will tell you just a couple of things that I've just observed working with Mindy. There's a number of things that I think if there were the resources, if they were studied outside of the comprehensive plan update, then as soon as you got to the comprehensive plan, you'd facilitate and get those things done. Because I mean, there were conversations about, there's new language about UGA expansions are getting harder. I mean, there's a lot of work you need to do to be able to show you need the capacity for it. There are opportunities in state law to do what's called capacity neutral swaps now, where you can remove some land and then add something that adds equal capacity. But it also has impacts because the traffic's happening in a different place and the utilities are different. There's some of that stuff that you need to that coordination needs to happen outside the update. So if we identify projects, or maybe it's even just like a process to identify those projects and then you go do them. There's lots of things that could be done that are pretty neat and, but they take time to really, to work on in coordination with some of the cities.
I'd like to expand a tiny bit on his recreation and tourism opportunities. Our addition was not without infrastructure also. And what that means in the east end of the county is that when we're, as a county, inviting people here to enjoy the park and the ski area and the wilderness areas that are primarily in the east end of the county, we don't have the infrastructure to support that kind of visitation. And I've reached out to Public Works and they say their hands are tied with like, we can't put public garbage cans out because we don't own any property in the downtown area. So it's up to the business owners or individuals in the county or in the town to provide all of the services for these tourists that are being driven here. And it just seems it's getting pretty unsustainable. So I don't blame people for wanting to come up there. It's a beautiful place, but we're kind of drowning in our own messy stuff up there because there's no support for the amount of people that are showing up. So I would like.
There was no public bathroom in Packwood?
No one.
No. One of the biggest issues that I have with Growth Management Act is that everything is based on population, which is based on residents that live full-time in a space, which completely ignores places like Packwood and many others across the state, where the people who are there are largely like, most of the homes are second homes in Packwood, whether or not they're being used for short-term rental or not, they're second homes. They're not a primary residence, so they don't count towards population. But we plan based on population, all of it. We don't have easy mechanisms to plan based on tourism population, right? The amount of people who are coming through a space and need bathroom, solid waste, better transportation. Oh my God, WashDOT will not listen to me. I'm trying so hard. I have shared this frustration of hitting
Yeah.
a wall over and over and over again. So there is a gap, and it's really hard to fill in this growth management world, because everything is driven by how many people live there. So it's just, we have a gap of how we do our planning, and it's really frustrating.
I just have a quick question. So is that the issue, is that the state won't allow us to put some provision in there for the amount of people that actually go to a place? I mean, there's got to be
No,
places in
we
the
certainly-
country
we
that,
absolutely can. This isn't like, it's not that we can't plan for it, it's that we're very caught up in planning for the population of people that live there. We have to meet so many mandates
Sure.
around that and focus so much of our effort around that, that it doesn't leave much to this else to focus on other things. So we have to kind of decide how to shoehorn that in. But that is exactly what we're doing in the sub-area plan. That's exactly what we're having these conversations with the sub-area plan.
How do cities like Winthrop or Metro Valley, how do they handle that?
Because they're cities. They're incorporated cities. And so they're not dealing with county. I understand that, but they're not, but we are a county planning for an entire county with many, many small communities that are not cities. So no. It's shocking to everybody. No, it's not a city.
Who has all the porta potties at the Shell station on the corner? Is that them?
That's why every business has porta potties in their parking
Oh,
lot.
oh, they just-
Because their septic can't
Oh.
handle the traffic. that's
Oh,
coming there.
okay.
I keep hearing over and over, that Packwood doesn't have any sewers. Winlock doesn't have enough sewers, enough water for the UGA that they put in. People have bought the land and are, supposedly trying to build on it, but they can't. So to me, it seems like an infrastructure problem should be solved before we start, sticks and boards.
It always comes back to water. Can you flush your toilet and can you get a drink of water? It always comes back to water. So, sorry, we sidetracked, but were there other lightning round, other items that you wanted to address on your list?
Nope.
Okay. That's, yeah.
If we're going to focus on recreation and tourism opportunities, then we need to look at limiting visual pollution with light and also man-made structures in timberland. So the, flood and wetlands maps, the other one, energy-wise, and is that we should perhaps be looking into putting grants for rooftop solar on government buildings just to lead the way. Because doesn't use up land and it doesn't create more impervious area.
Okay, okay. Also, we talked about, of course, broadband support and, let's see. Oh, wind and solar. Okay. I don't know about how many of you like to see, windmills on the tops of all of our mountains, but I personally don't. But I think that we have an opportunity to capitalize on green energy industries by opening up and encouraging the use of solar roofing materials that are becoming more affordable now. And so every roof in the county, I think it would be nice to encourage the use of solar producing roofing materials as people age out and replace their roofs. Also, when we talked about climate and resiliency, one of my big things is besides moving out of the floodplain where people voluntarily want to and have a place to go, is also the flow-through dam for flood control. I think is going to be a great asset to us if we can get that built for the future, and it'll help mitigate flooding. The toxins and the waste and stuff that flow into our streams after a major flood event, this can go a long way towards helping with some of that. And there's a lot more I could say about it, but those were some of our key takeaways. Did you have anything else? Okay.
Okay, so to be efficient, I won't repeat, because I pretty much agree with, most of what's been said, critical areas and things like that are all important. So, I'll do a new topic. So aside from construction, the other thing that I've done most of my life is, in the fire service. Spent 20+ years between volunteer career, but within that was also about 12 years fighting wildland fires. So when it comes to the urban interface stuff, it's kind of mine. I think we all have something. We have, the broadband and the critical areas, and everybody here has something. So, in fact, one thing I was kind of telling them about is, so I actually volunteer with emergency management on their wildfire side. And our goal this year was to go to the Packwood Randall area and do a lot of public outreach, public education, do some wildfire mitigation stuff and try to do plans for that. It was all based off of essentially grant money that we were going to get through the state. I have yet to go to Randall, Packwood to do any of that stuff. And it's not totally our fault. It comes down to money, which a lot of this is going to come down to money. And so I think the education piece of the Firewise, all the public education for the wildland urban interface stuff, there's a new code coming down at some point for the wildland urban interface. I have mixed reviews on, but it's going to be something I think at some point we'll have to focus on with the growth and people building in areas that are heavily forested or stuff like that. That when the urban interface that some people think about are just homes in rural areas, which is true, but from me going out and doing structural assessments on these fires and things, and pulling up to a driveway and you can barely see the front door of the house because it's nothing but 100-year-old trees, like, I'm sorry, but your house is going to burn down. Nothing we can do unless we clear cut this thing, which we're not going to do in the next 4 hours when that fire gets here. And so there's people that are going to do that anyway, because that's what they want. They want to be out in the middle of nowhere, buried in the trees. But I think that we just need to be prepared that, as we sprawl out, if we're going to put something in writing that says, yes, you can build there, you can't. I believe it's Cowlitz or Clark County, one of those. They are requiring some sort of assessment, mitigation assessment as part of their permit process. So you can build here, but in order to build here, you have to do these things, whether it's fire resistant building materials, whether it's, no trees within a certain area, whatever the case may be. So just stuff to think about. I know that the code is going to determine some of that ahead of time, but anyway, that's my piece.
Okay, fine. Section 3 here, resource lands. I like the term conservation. I grew up in Wisconsin, and conservation was a very big deal there. We don't have much of that around here. We go in for land speculation a lot, and it kind of ties together in a lot of ways. So I'm pushing for some enforcement The UGA should have tighter limits. I think it's just spread out into the country. It doubled the size of Winlock, for goodness sakes. I mean, that's just nutty. Pardon? Yeah, well, I know, I get wound up, but it's late. I get wound up on this stuff. Uh, As for section 4, it occurs to me that providing broadband is not something the jurisdiction should be doing. Go sign up for Starlink, let the private sector. The private sector does a great job. Let them do we don't need to spend our tax money on giving somebody else broadband. Goodness gracious, I had a dial-up telephone when I was a kid. And I mentioned earlier, we're really limited on the services that we have. Packwood and Winlock are just two examples. Without water and sewer, why are we even talking about growth? I mean, it's got to start there. So that was it for me.
Okay, I think we talked about the increased recreational and tourism opportunities and all agreed that because we're trying to grow the city out, push everybody in the city as much as we can, that we should, in our code, make it possible to increase recreational and tourism opportunities. Maybe it's, to buy something in Packwood to put a toilet and some garbage cans. I mean, come on. Are we really, does Seattle have to tell us what we're doing? I mean, we can't do that? That's ridiculous. Anyway, and then my last thing was that I was listening to something the other day and it was on solar. It was actually more rather than rooftop, it was kind of solar farms where people could buy in the power as a group or maybe as a city or as an industry or whatever. And they said that one of the largest impediments is that the local communities code doesn't allow for it, even though the state may be. And so I'm sure Washington State is all for it. So I don't know if our rules would allow it, but
We
they
do need to do a little bit of tweaking because
Yeah.
we do have limitations on producing your own energy on site. So
Yeah.
we do need to do a little bit of tweaking around that. Yep.
It seems like it might be a good opportunity for, I didn't think solar would be that big of a thing around here, but the way they described it is it can be on the west side. And you can still have your ag, they were saying you can graze, you can do hay, you can do all kinds of things under the solar maybe, so it must be put up taller. But anyway, you can preserve your ag lands and have solar. And it's, keeping your ag lands into farms, you cannot make any money farming, can you?
Depends upon what you're growing.
Maybe.
Are we ready for that conversation in our county?
That might be
Because
the only
some of
thing.
us are ready for that conversation in this county. Talk about a
Because
revenue producer.
If you don't have water, you're not making any money farming. So you could be a little farmer with a cow and a sheep and that kind of thing, but nobody's farming and making, no. So, and I sign out.
So we just got a couple more, thank you guys. We have a couple more slides to kind of wrap up here. And then we've got a couple of go to the orders and then we'll send everybody home to bed. So.
We can just quickly sum up. So just great information tonight. We're going to pair it with everything that we heard and the things we need to tackle. I feel like we've got some direction. There's probably going to be some policies that need some fill in the blank, like how are we going to do this? When are you going to do this? What are the priorities? But we're going to start that conversation. So we'll get some drafts, sets of policies out to you and the general public, get the feedback from that, and then we'll wrap it into the full plan after we get through this winter. So more to come as we work through September and October, but this has been extremely helpful and so we will be reporting back to all of y'all. So thank you for taking the time tonight. I'll turn it back over to you for some good.
Yeah,
advice.
so my last little wrap ups on this is leave your paper so that we can try to decipher what you wrote down. Do feel free to follow up with emails. If you have other ideas, you can send them directly to me. I'll shoot everything over to Clay. We will share the notes out so I can see Joel's screen from here and it's color coded and it has a ton of notes. Look at this. We will share that. Look at what Joel's been doing. Thank you,
Wow.
Joel. We will share this information back out with you guys so you can see this, but this is just, it's a continuing conversation. So don't feel like you can't just give us an idea tomorrow, or if you go somewhere over the weekend and you see something, you're like, that's super cool and I want to do that, share that too, because I love going out and stealing code from other people. So that's the end of that. And I'll turn it back over to
Okay.
Frank to close out the rest of our meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mindy. Thank you. We appreciate your moderation and all that you've done for us tonight. Are there any items from staff for good of the order?
Yeah, so I do have a couple items, and I'm actually glad that our Board of County Commissioners are here tonight, because I wanted to let you guys know that we're going to shift gears just a bit. So as you can see on there, we're going to head into some public engagement over the next few months. So we're going to be wrapping things up, and we're not going to be talking with you guys so much about comp plan for a minute. However, I do have a number of code amendments that I'm going to bring forward to you guys that we need to do. A couple of big ones that have to do with Senate Bill 5290. So Senate Bill 5290 is a rule that was passed in 2022, three, that sets time frames for processing permits. And so we're working on the code amendments associated with that right now. And we'll be bringing that back to you guys shortly. And also with that is we're making a change to how we do private road review. So you guys had a long conversation about private road naming, but we're going to change how we're doing private road review, because we found some ways that we can expedite that, which honestly tends to be one of our big sticking points in terms of time it takes to get things through the permitting process. Lori has experienced that. I see that. Lori's experienced that. So, so those are two big code things that are going to be coming to you guys in September and October, and then coming to the Board of County Commissioners in November, December. We have to have 5290 implemented by January 1. So they're coming quick. Just on that note, we make the timelines already on like 90% of what we do. So we're not in a bad place here in terms of our timelines, but we do need to make some process improvements and make some changes. That's coming. So anyway, I want to give you guys a heads up. We're going to switch gears. We're not going to talk about comp plan for a few months. We're going to focus on some specific code amendments for the next few months.
Yay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mindy. All right. Are there any items from the Planning Commission for good of the order? Yes, Bob. I knew you were
You
going
knew
to
I
have
was gonna do
something
that.
for
I
us.
think it was nice. Thanks, commissioners, for both coming. One of the things I've said, especially as we get new people on like every year, is how I like this planning commission. And it is Mindy and who was before you? Lee before
Lee.
you. I've already forgot her. Have done such a good job of getting people from throughout the county who have such diverse interests. And we can do that and still respect each other. And I think it's a good group. And I'm glad you got to see that tonight, how we can disagree but agree. Thank you.
Yes, on occasion disagree agreeably, but always, with the county's best interests in mind. So, all right. If there's nothing else from the planning commissioners, the next planning commission meeting will be September 10th, and the agenda items will be private road review process changes. Staff, are there any other items for that meeting that you need to let us know about?
I don't think so
Okay.
yet.
Are there any commissioners that will not be available or in attendance at the September 10th meeting?
I'll be out.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure, but I will let you know.
Okay.
I have a doctor's appointment on the 6th of September. And depending on what he finds,
Okay.
could be.
So possibly Bob and Jeff.
If you need it for a vote, I could probably find a phone.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, it sounds like that's it. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
You do.
Thank you, Jason. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night. I'm sorry?
Something I think was kind of skipped over.
What was skipped over?
Okay, something I think was skipped over.
Oh, that's just.
In the impact.
Oh, no, we talked a little bit about it, but I don't. Oh,
Today?
yeah.
I didn't catch anything on.
Oh, okay.
At all.
Yeah.
I was kind of.
We were talking about, beefing them up as far as using them for, emergency evacuation centers.
Yeah, but nothing on the, our
Yeah.
schools are kind of up on the scene
Nice to be
with
here.
students as it is now.
Well, the state is responsible for that.